I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back. Part 3 of this week's London is Blue podcast. If you missed the first 2 parts, we talked about the end of transfers as we know it, talked about the Chelsea women's season ending. Not only did you have myself, Brandon, Nick, and Dan there, we had a good friend of the pod and goal.com Chelsea correspondent Nizaar Kinseall joining us, adding his expertise and knowledge. So Naz, we brought you back because, as everyone knows, football returned this past weekend. It returned in Germany in the Bundesliga. So in our Discord server, everyone was picking their new teams so they could try to have someone to watch. Did you pick a team, Naz? Or look at this, we got a kitch.
I've got a lot of kits, guys, so you're getting a bit of a window into my world. But this is a Freiburg kit.
Freiburg, yeah.
Now my German team. So yeah, it's a pretty retro shirt. It's like 90s, I think. So yeah, I got it in Freiburg. I actually swapped one of my football shirts for a German fans shirt. So yeah, I've been to quite a few German games. So Freiburg was the one I enjoyed the most with the atmosphere. And the atmosphere in Germany is unique and it's kind of a bit more friendly than the English atmosphere. The English atmosphere is more about jumping down the throats of the referee and calling him a W word. But Germany's a bit more about sausages and beer. So it's kind of a bit more of a jolly vibe. I mean, you can drink beer while watching the game and stuff like that.
Sounds great.
Novel concept.
Yeah.
I mean, English fans can't be trusted to watch the game while drinking beer. You know, we can't drink beer in view of the pitch because we're too naughty. But the Germans, they're well behaved compared to us anyway, and you can do that.
Well, we'll definitely be adding a Bundesliga match if we can squeeze it in next time we go to Europe. But yeah, Elizabeth on Twitter saying, not Chelsea related, but how do you all feel with the Bundesliga coming back behind closed doors? I mean, Naz, everyone expected the Bundesliga to be the first league to come back. Obviously, Ligue 1 canceled, the Eredivisie canceled. La Liga is still trying to come back. Serie A, they are trying to come back, but they have probably the most challenges over anybody. Kind of, what were your thoughts? How are you feeling when you got the official date announced?
I think that everyone just wants a distraction, which is what it provided, and I think certainly it did absolutely entertain people. Is it right to come back? We don't, it's a personal view, it's difficult, but I think that really it shows just the way, the way football is going to come back. It exists within a bigger landscape. Football's always existed within a country, like English football exists within England, and German football exists within Germany, and Germany have handled the coronavirus crisis probably better than many other countries around Europe, certainly better than my country in my personal view. The way they've tested way more people, the way they've kind of, monitored the spread of the virus because of that, the way they've stopped deaths by really being proactive about sending people out to homes of vulnerable people to check on them. All this kind of stuff creates a picture where you can go back to your society quicker. And, it can, help you continue as normal. Now, it's still a very controversial issue in Germany, and a lot of people think it came back too soon. And we're seeing this issue play out in England as well with coming back. But, I think that, for us football fans, for me, I wanted to watch some football. I got to watch some high-quality football. I was even watching Belarusian football a little bit.
Oh, man.
We've never stopped. That's how much I'm obsessed with football. So, yeah, to see some quality football for once, because Belarusian football was a bit off, really, from what I'm used to.
Now, hold on, Naz. Are you being a little harsh?
I think they accept that they're quite limited compared to the Premier League. But German football is definitely comparable to the Premier League, and the way they was interesting, we're going to explore that more. But it was welcomed, and I'm sure that we all took in a bit of football action, didn't we, this weekend?
It's true. I watched part of the Dortmund Schalke game personally. Nick, what did you take in?
I did a half because it wasn't a competitive game, so I kind of switched off and did other things. But I watched the Borussia Mönchengladbach game versus Eintracht Frankfurt. That was pretty good. Ended up being a better game in the second half. But it's one of the things I took away from it, Dan, is like when you look at like players' fitness, and I think the commentators did an okay job of kind of calling this out, is there haven't been after 2 months off, there wasn't a preseason friendly schedule to get back into like real match shape. So this is the first real match, that these teams are playing. And you could tell after like 40 minutes that some of them were just dead tired for all the reasons that you could process. So it wasn't quite up to full speed. And I don't think anyone would expect that, but it was definitely good to see a lot of these players kind of getting a run out.
Are you maybe throwing a little shade at the Schalke goalkeeper? Like, is that maybe the player that you're referencing in this moment? Has Holland eviscerated him quite quickly?
Not to point fingers at the card-carrying member of our goalkeepers union here, but Brandon, thoughts and feelings?
He's the Germany U21 national team goalkeeper. He's a kid. Like, he'll be fine.
Always defending goalkeepers.
Always.
Never change. I was going to say, so there were a couple of interesting things, right? Like the fact that you could hear the mechanical boards move or echo through the stadiums, that you could, witness the players sitting multiple feet apart, no noise, celebrations in front of zero fans. Like, definitely the challenge of atmosphere. If Arsenal was a library, some of these would be equivalent to a clean room, where people in suits would be like working on like pathogens and things. This is just, it was so bizarre to have that as the backdrop for all of this, Naz. And I think it's going to be really interesting. Like, what was the one or two things that you felt like, were most shocking in that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that the face masks, watching people wearing face masks, I think sort of weird to see players so close to each other just because, you've been living in a way that you're not close to anyone for so long. And I think that some goal celebrations, they were kind of, I think one guy, Dedrick Boyata kissed Gruit. Yeah, but whereas like Haaland's goal, they did social distancing. I watched the Freiburg Leipzig game myself, watched the full 90 minutes. It was a fantastic game, even with the sort of pre-season vibes. And I think that Leipzig probably is a warning shot for Chelsea and the other big Premier League clubs that an early goal is important, and not letting the tension get to you, because you don't have the atmosphere, you don't have the fans to drive you on in home games to sort of break down that wall. And I think Leipzig kind of struggled with that. And I think that was interesting, whereas Dortmund got an early goal and they sort of ran all over Schalke. So it kind of shows you maybe psychological dynamics that players are not used to dealing with, because it's going to change the whole atmosphere of the way the game's played. But I think as people, the one thing I would say is like, I think we need to give the players, the referees, even everything, the organisation, a bit of leeway. I mean, there's going to be mistakes. I think that Schalke became the first team in German history to make 5 substitutions, and they're allowed to make 5 subs now. But I think they made it in 4 goes, where you're supposed to do it in 3 stoppages. So you're allowed to bring 2 on in 2 different goes, but not stop the game 4 times. But the referee basically ballsed it up, and that's something that I think we're going to have to be a bit kind on. As journalists, as people who are commentating on social media, it is here for our entertainment. There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be problems, and we kind of have to give a bit of leeway, even for the kisses, the big sloppy kiss, which would definitely pass coronavirus if that guy has it.
Well, the whole atmosphere thing kind of brought something to my attention, which I think is going to be important, especially for the English game, which is the stadiums will have to pipe in some noise for a couple of reasons. One, I think, you have to kind of manufacture atmosphere if you're not able to have it. So that's kind of one point, and I think it'll make it a little bit more exciting to watch it that way. The other reason is what Arlo White brought up on his Twitter yesterday, which is you can clearly hear the players talking, yelling at each other, coaches yelling at players. And Naz, I'm sure in the English game, there are lots of naughty words that are said on the pitch. So if you're a TV provider covering the match, Arlo White basically from the NBC Sports side said, how many times am I going to have to apologize for inappropriate language that's been happening, because you can hear it so clearly. So I think that you're going to have to pipe in fake crowd noise or music or something to kind of amp up the atmosphere in England, because it was eerie to kind of watch the empty stadium thing happen yesterday.
Yeah, it's kind of, we call it the new normal in this country, our politicians and stuff, and it certainly will be the same in football where everything changes. But yeah, I think that, I'm not sure if they'll pump in atmosphere or not. I think that probably clubs will get their own individual choices as well. But yeah, I mean, you have to do it in the right way. There's algorithms and stuff apparently which can simulate crowd noise depending on the game and how it goes. But it's going to be very weird, and there are technical solutions to various things, but listening to the managers and players and stuff will be interesting. I mean, I watch a lot of academy football as well live, and it's kind of similar to that where you can hear everything. You get kind of you get more engrossed in that side of the game, whereas, I think eventually we want the fans back, and that's what we're all working towards. And it's going to be difficult, not as good. It's not as good of a product, which is partly why the broadcasters are probably not happy with sinking all that money and not getting exactly what they paid for. And English football is paid, English football attracts people because the fans are so interesting, so good. Same with German football as well. So it's kind of like, the product's not as good. But I think we have to be a bit sort of maybe clever with technical solutions, but also be a bit kind and not be so negative on social media, because it will give us something to do. And we can't wait for a vaccine because football will be destroyed, really. The football as we know it won't be the same. So the players are kind of being pushed to go back because the vaccine might not come for over a year yet. And can we survive without football for a year? The business model won't survive how we like it. The way football is, will be completely transformed. Some clubs won't exist anymore. Some players won't have jobs. This is the sort of thing we're talking about. People like me might not have jobs if football doesn't exist for a year. So you've got all this going on, and these are the really big philosophical questions at the heart of it. So it's imperfect, but it's better than nothing, isn't it? It's kind of like that.
The idea of the technical solutions, though, like, just brings me this idea of, in the National Football League or the NFL here in America, like, one of the best things that they do is they mic up players, and throughout the games, or even like there'll be like an end of the week like culmination where they pull like the best like clips and commentary in game, where you get like a receiver and defender kind of mouthing off to each other, and they kind of play that clip in, like going deeper into the tactical side of the game, going deeper into the player versus player to almost build that up. Like, hey, you're going to have Chelsea play City. Like, what's Tomori going to be mouthing off to Aguero about for 90 minutes? And like, how do you pipe some of that in? And, I mean, I'm not trying to like WWE or WWF, the Premier League or the Bundesliga, but like, I think that's the way that it's the way that you create a little of the drama and the spectacle a little bit more without having fans. Because without fans, like, when am I supposed to cheer? When am I supposed to, sense the conflict? And, some of it's going to have to be manufactured. So I think you lean into that. And I think you lean into the fact that, if you can, just say, look, we're going to broadcast what you're saying as a coach, and thankfully, like, we're going to ban people from listening to it who are kind of associated with the team, so that for 90 minutes you don't have to worry about like who's listening in. Like Mourinho would be having fits because you think everybody's spying on him already. Like, to do that would just be an extra layer of hatred for it. But something like that, Brandon, just where it tries to be innovative in this moment when you have to do something a little different.
Look, they're going to get creative. There's no doubt about it. Obviously not having fans there in the echo and kind of like that weird kind of environment wasn't the only thing that was pretty unique. They had match balls being sanitized regularly. So there were, people taking care of that on the sideline. Since the subs bench couldn't sit next to each other, they had to be socially distanced. So they ended up being in the stands so they could distance, to the point where Leipzig had to borrow a set of aircraft stairs, just like you would get on a plane from the tarmac, so they could get down to warm up. What are some of the other ones? Oh, Schalke, first team to use 5 subs. So that's a thing. Just like, I think, 1 for every goal they gave in. And then, yeah, obviously the celebrations were different.
I think the point of trying to make the best of it, make solutions, is probably the best way to look at anything with coronavirus. I think in the football world as well, that's the way we need to look at it too. I think what Dan said was quite interesting, actually, just because I think that in this country, sports can be very conservative. You look at cricket and football, cricket wearing white and playing those 5-day games. And then English football is very much the same, very much like a tradition-based game. But, we've also looked, and we've got to be honest, English Premier League looks towards NFL and it looks towards US sports for innovation. And we need to sort of be brave and take some risks, maybe even to sort of keep the product as exciting. Maybe crowd factor, which is something that's probably not as interesting in US sports, in my opinion. But that's something we've always had. But maybe we need to look to US sports again for some of those innovations that just re-galvanise it, give a bit more to the fans and give you a reason to switch on, because what we want is this game to stay popular, people stay hooked. We're super fans, but there's a lot of casual fans out there as well. And we want those guys to be hooked because it keeps football where we're used to it, which is the biggest sport that people like around the world. So US sport is great for that, media innovation, broadcasting, and I think that I think we have to look at that and take it seriously to make it interesting as possible, really.
Well, Nick, that brings us to Project Restart. Can we restart this league? Can we bring it back? Again, citing Miguel Delaney again from The Independent. He had an article outlining a lot of this stuff. And I've been listening to a lot of the BBC and Sky Sports, and they've been bringing on managers, chairmen, chairwomen, chairpersons. And I find it hard to trust when they all go, my players can't wait to be back. They 100% all want to play. And then you get Raheem Sterling and Aguero and Danny Rose and just some other players that are like, no, I'm good. Now, to be fair, I think there's a difference, right? Premier League players, they probably are more comfortable in their situation and less concerned about playing. League One, League Two, completely different. Those guys are going to take risks because they need the money or, whatever it is. So anyways, Project Restart, I guess, where are you with all of this?
It's really hard. I mean, obviously, Naz, you're on the ground every day kind of sourcing information on this. But, I mean, it seemed like they've gone through a lot of different scenarios now and even talking, most recently about what a season abandonment would look like. I haven't seen a lot of this type of quote, and maybe I want to start there, which is I put out a tweet this week as there were more talks about Project Restart because they were supposed to, I think they met on Monday after meeting the previous Friday, and we're talking about all these scenarios. And I would love to see we will restart the league when it is safe to do so for our players and staff and coaches and all that kind of stuff. It's obviously a money-driven decision right now. It's one that, there are a lot of big TV contracts that they have to fulfill, and they're kind of worried about what that might do if they are not able to fulfill that. But it seemed, at least on the surface to me, more of a talk about business impact than it has about human impact. And I don't know if that's the same way it's coming across to you.
Well, I think I'll jump in here. I think that, in the UK, that's generally what the debate is about a lot of businesses right now, and a lot of things going back to work. And Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he said that if you can't work from home, go back to work, and footballers can't work from home. Their job's on the pitch. Coaches work on the pitch. Everyone works on the pitch. So do they go back to work? Is their job important? There's a lot of philosophical side to this. Is a factory worker's job less or more important than a footballer's job? It's hard to quantify. And I think that the UK as a country, our government is pushing for the economic side now, because we've got to live with coronavirus. And do we move on to a life beyond coronavirus? The case numbers are going down, the deaths are going down. Some people think it's too early. There's still a lot of people dying, unfortunately. It's still a lot of risk factor. And, I think that, it's different risks for different people as well. So, Tammy Abraham spoke about his dad having, asthma, and also, black and ethnic minority players. They're more at risk. They're more at risk. Their families are more at risk if they bring home the illness. It's a problem. But if they were working also in a factory or in a shop that's now allowed to reopen, they'd probably be doing the same thing. So it's kind of like it's so complicated. It's so personal. I think that players will have to be given opt-outs. I think the next week, after this gets released, all the talk will be about players, what the players want. They've already met with captains, they've already met with the coaches, and they have certain concerns. I think players have different views. You know, if you're in a relegation battle, you might not want to play. You might just want to stay in the Premier League, yeah. And there's going to be a bit of that as well, a bit of vested interest. But if you're chasing the Champions League place, then you're going to want to play. If you're Liverpool, you're going to want to play and all that. So it's a complicated, it's political. There's politics in football, and they vote for things. The way things are decided in the Premier League is the Premier League literally is 20 clubs that just vote for things. And, you know, if you can get enough votes as a club, Chelsea might vote one way, West Ham might vote another way, and it's one vote versus one. So that's how things are going to move forward. I think that generally the financial aspect is driving it forward to play again. And looking at Germany, that's the model of how it's done. And has the German model been a disaster? It might turn out to be, but I think it's okay. I think it's been okay. I think it's going to be stop-start as well. So we might have the Premier League running for 5 weeks, then 2 weeks off, and then back again. So it's going to be a bit weird like that. So, yeah, I think the least bad option for me is to restart. Just if we like football the way it is, if players want to get paid the same amount of money, then carry on, unfortunately.
Well, the interesting thing is, you know, obviously first Bundesliga matches were yesterday or Saturday at time of recording. You know, they basically have a 2-week window now to see if there's a spike in infections among the league, right? Because there's like a 14-day incubation period for the virus. So I think everybody across the sporting world is kind of looking at that model, knowing that football is a contact sport and that you got players kissing each other in celebrations and stuff like that, to see if there's a spike. And if Germany's able to provide a as good as it gets type of model for what this can be for right now, then my guess is that it buys the Premier League a little bit of time to make a final decision. But, you know, Dan, you had a player like Raheem Sterling and even Megan Rapinoe in the States say that they need 4 to 5 weeks to get up to speed again after being off for 2 months. So, you know, you start to look at condensed timelines when the season would hypothetically start next year and what the summer looks like. And it kind of becomes a cluster more so if you have to wait than if you just kind of went at it right now with the information that you had.
That's the other thing that we have not discussed in great detail is just the ramp time to get back to what we would consider like a top flight, you know, physical fitness status when, you know, you're looking at teams that, you know, every match is important, whether it's a relegation battle, whether it's a fight for top 4 or top 6. You know, if you're a team that's in 8th, 9th, or 10th right now, and you think you might have the mobility to move up to, you know, European football, you might have players who have been training at home as best they can, but there's a way difference between staying in shape and match fitness. And I don't think any of us are going to say with the workouts we've done at home that we're nearly ready enough to be at the level of, you know, Tammy or Mason or any player in the Premier League. And getting ready at home is not relevant to the same way that they typically train at Cobham and get ready for a full 11 on 11. So I think we have to take that into consideration too, that there has to be some planned ramp period, you know, whether it's behind closed doors matches where they play, just to make sure that they're not going to risk injury actually just playing the game. You know, there's the issue with illness and being infected, sure, but there's also the issue of, like, if you're not appropriately trained, you go in for, you know, maybe you think you're as fast as you are typically, you go in for a tackle, you do it the wrong way, you have a catastrophic injury. You know, that's not a good place to be in either, because up until this point, when we stopped games, you were at the peak fitness level, Brandon, and like the risk for injury or re-injury has to be huge too.
Yeah, but there's no time for that. If you genuinely want to finish the season, there's no time for that. Like they're compromising on so many things to make it happen. And your point's right, your point's valid, but it doesn't fit in with what they need. So it can't be taken care of. Gio Reyna, everyone in the U.S., super excited to see him play for Dortmund yesterday, injured in the warm-up because they've had a 10 to 12-day preseason. You're right, but you know what their answer to that? Oh, we'll give you 5 subs because you're not match fit. You know, it just –
it's also about, like, changing the rules halfway through the season. Like, if you're worried about ending the season on current points or doing some sort of scenario that way, and then you change the rules at the 32-week mark or whatever we're in, 9-week mark for the rest of the season. Like, how is there not an asterisk on that? to me.
Yeah.
Like you can't be full of piety about the rules being the rules no matter what, and then change them halfway through. And it just, I don't know. I think it's just a little bit hypocritical, to view the world that way. But
no, the rules, teams are going to be different, right? There's a good chance that some players leave teams as well. It's crazy. I mean, it checks the box of getting it done, Naz. It checks the box of playing merit. It's not the way any of us would want, but it seems to be the only way forward is to play the games in some fashion, get kind of hurried up, call it done, and then get ready for the new season.
It's sad. It's like it's an imperfect solution. There's no good solution. There's no great right answer. That's the problem. But maybe it's the least bad option to sort of save the economy of football. I mean, it's still going to be massively affected, but save the economy of football, which benefits a lot of people, especially, in this country, it's a massive game, employs many people, all that kind of thing. And I guess it's got that entertainment factor, but also in a sporting context, it's going to be the least deserving. I mean, Liverpool, right, they get a bye. Yeah, they deserve the title. Doesn't matter. That's not a problem. The problem's Champions League places. Say Leicester or Chelsea drop out of the Champions League place. They can feel massively hard done by because they were in there. They were right in the mix before all this happened. And then, this could affect them adversely. You don't know. One of the players could get coronavirus. Chelsea could lose a guy from, a big player. Maybe Williams in top form and he leaves and he's joining Tottenham, so they can't play him, or something like that. They could, and then somebody else could sneak into the Champions League spots. Relegation, there's going to be a huge asterisk. I mean,
what a shit season to get relegated. Honestly,
yeah. I mean, you're going to be the harsh. I think the only thing worse than getting relegated like this is getting relegated on points per game or something like that. I think that's absolutely awful way of doing things. And you're getting into politics, you're getting into legal battles. I think the point of least friction is to continue. And I think a lot of people do want to continue as well. I think all the footballers who I've interviewed and all the coaches I've interviewed since lockdown happened have wanted to carry on. I'm not saying everyone, and loads of players don't want to continue or maybe are a bit 50-50, want reassurance. It's very nuanced, but there is a sense, I think, that I want to be working. Everyone wants to be working, and football is probably the greatest job you can possibly do. So if they can prove it's safe, then I think that a lot of them will be happy. But they need to do that now. They need to prove to the players, because the one people that can stop the Premier League restarting, Project Restart, is the footballers themselves. They just say they don't play. If enough of them say that, then it's very complicated. But it's going to affect next season. Next season's going to have loads of problems as well. So it's interesting, really. I mean, next season's definitely behind closed doors for me. I'm not going to watch a normal football match, I don't think, until not next season, but the season after that. You know what I mean? Euros, maybe. I was dreaming about the Euros, but yeah, the Euros causes a problem as well because that's in the diary. So they're trying to get all the leagues done before the Euros.
Right.
Yeah, it's a scheduling issue even still.
All right, last question, and it can be as simple as yes or no, Naz. Will the Premier League use neutral venues or not to finish the season?
Probably no. I think that they're pushing the government want them to, and they don't want to. Pretty much every club near enough wants to use their own stadium, and they're using their own stadium in Germany. So for me, I think that they don't trust English football fans. I spoke about the difference between English and German football fans at the start of this pod, and at the end of this pod, this is also different in that English authorities don't trust English fans to not turn up to the stadium and be idiots. So that's why they're talking about neutral venues. So Chelsea fans don't show up to Stamford Bridge, Man United fans don't show up to Old Trafford, Liverpool fans, the main ones they're talking about, don't show up to Anfield because they won the league. Yeah, it's going to be a terrible way to win a league to not be able to party. But yeah, that's the reasoning. But I think that the Premier League will win that argument.
Yeah, Glenn Murray had a good quote on one of the podcasts I listened to. He said, look, if we have to play Liverpool away and then we have to play them in a neutral venue, that's a huge disadvantage for us. And I thought it was a fair point, but we all have to keep in mind that this whole season where we're at, it's not going to be fair. It's not going to be even. You just got to make the best of a shit situation. So Anyways, Naz, thank you as always for hanging out with us, spending some time on your Sunday. I know your diary is jam full of Zoom calls. So we just snuck right in there.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, it's good to catch up with you guys. And yeah, I mean, I've not spoken to a guy from America. To speak to three all in one go is great. And glad you guys doing okay and all of that. That's the most important thing, right? So yeah, good to see you.
Oh, man. Well, take care of yourself, obviously. Nick and Dan, thank you, gentlemen, for joining as always. Listeners, we appreciate you. Let us know what you thought. A ton of questions and thoughts about this. Naz's links in the description. Go check it out. But that's going to wrap it up for us this week. But we'll be back when hopefully football will be close to returning as well. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.